It's easy to point to a moment, to freeze a frame and say that is when everything changed. We do it in our own lives. We do it in history, and in the chaotic, brilliant, brutal opera that is professional wrestling. We live for those moments. We search for the lightning strike, the sound of the glass shattering, the 1 second that redefines the entire story. But what happens when the moment is so big, it breaks the frame? What happens when the lightning strikes, and it doesn't just light up the room? It burns the whole house down. This is the story of that fire. This is the story of the real revolution, the one that wasn't televised, until it held the entire broadcast hostage. The show was almost over. We were expecting the main event. We were expecting the champion, the hero, the predictable cadence of the story we'd been told 1,000 times. The crowd was settled, checking their phones, already thinking about the traffic in the parking lot. And then, a sound, not music. Lack of Italiano. The thunderous roar of the pyro faded, but it wasn't replaced by a theme song. It was replaced by a deep, resonant hum. The lights in the arena didn't just go out. They were drained of their color, leaving a cold, sterile twilight. Then, blue and pink. Not the neon pink of the past, but a sharp, electric magenta. They flooded the stage, bathing the 20,000 people in an alien glow. The crowd, as one, stopped. They stopped checking their phones. They stopped talking. They just watched it. 4 figures. They appeared from the darkness, not walking out of the tunnel, but simply emerging from the shadows at the top of the ramp. A stickman animator, drawing this scene, would only need for simple lines, but the posture would tell you everything. The queen, Heroba. A silhouette, the nightmare, her shoulders wide, a predator. The star, all glitter and defiance, and the outsider, the technician, still and coiled. Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, Tiffany Stratton, Stephanie Vaca. Together. The crowd didn't cheer. Not at first. It was a sound you rarely hear in an arena. The collective inhale of 20,000 people. A gasp. Then ... The explosion. It was raw. It was confused. It was furious joy. This wasn't an appearance. This wasn't a surprise return. You could see it in their eyes. They didn't wave. They didn't play to the crowd. They walked, slowly, in a diamond formation. Don't they ramp? The production truck must have been in absolute chaos. The announcers ... were silent. Not stunned silent in the way they're paid to be. Genuinely ... silent. You could hear their microphones open, picking up only the sound of their breathing and the roar of the crowd. This was not in the script. The 4 women reached the ringside. The champion, the male champion, who was scheduled for the main event, was still in the ring, holding his title, his face a mask of utter confusion. He looked at the referee. The referee looked at the timekeeper. No one knew what to do. Rhea Ripley simply slid into the ring. She didn't run. She didn't use the steps. She stalked. She walked right up to the champion, her mummy persona gone, replaced by something cold. She didn't look at his title. She looked past him, at the hard camera. Charlotte, Tiffany, and Stephanie surrounded the ring, forming a guard. They weren't there to fight him. They were there to dismiss him. Rhea just pointed. She pointed at the ramp. Get out. And the champion, the man who was the face of the company. He looked at her. He looked at the crowd. And, for the first time, he looked irrelevant. He left. They didn't just take the main event. They took the show. We, the audience, we only see what the camera shows us. We see the 4 women standing in the ring, bathed in that blue and pink light, as the show cuts to black 30 minutes early. But the real story... The revolution. It always happens backstage. Imagine the gorilla position, that small, sacred space just behind the curtain, where careers are made and broken. It's usually a chaotic hub of producers, executives, and wrestlers. But on this night, we are told, it was empty. Utterly empty. When the four finally came through the curtain, the hallway had cleared. People had retreated. They hadn't run. They had just ... moved. Made space. The only one left standing there, reportedly, was the man in charge. The architect. He wasn't clapping. He wasn't yelling. He was just ... watching. His arms folded. The camera, in our minds, pans down the hall. We see the men's locker room door. It's ajar. Inside, we hear ... Nothing. Not the usual post-show banter or the smashing of furniture. A heavy, angry, confused silence. The men whose matches were cut, the men whose entire purpose was just declared secondary, were sitting in the dark. But the real tension? The women's locker room? The other women. The ones who had fought for the first revolution. The ones who thought they were all in this together. The four didn't even go to that locker room. They had their own, and that closed door. ... That separation was the first shot fired in a new internal war. The next day, the atmosphere at the training facility was described as toxic. The four were not there. They were, supposedly, suspended by the Campania piece of paper for the public. But the damage was done. The roster was now split, not between good and bad, but between the past and the future. The other women, they were adrift. They were the ones who had earned their spots, played by the rules, and built the division. And in one night, these four women had made all of that respect look like weakness. We can picture the scene. Two long-tenured veterans, sitting on the edge of a ring, tapes on their hands, not even practicing. One says to the other, "Did they just ruin everything we built?" And the other replies, "Or did they just do what we were always too afraid to do?" This was the fracture. The men were angry, but the women were heartbroken. The sisterhood was a lie. The men saw it as a power play for time and money. The other women saw it as a deep, personal betrayal. Tiffany, the new one, had betrayed her generation. Charlotte, the legacy, had betrayed her peers. Rhea, the leader, had betrayed her own locker room. And her inclusion was the most terrifying. She wasn't part of their family. She was an outsider, a sign that the coup wasn't just internal. It was a message to the entire world of wrestling. No one was safe. By morning, it wasn't a wrestling story. It was a business story. It was on entertainment news. It was on financial bulletins. WB stock dips after hostile takeover broadcast. The company, in its official capacity, tried to spin it. It's the next chapter in the women's evolution. The press release read, "A bold news story." But the sponsors were not impressed. The story was too real. The language was too aggressive. Taking over the show, dismissing the champion, cutting the broadcast. This wasn't entertainment. This was chaos. We can imagine the phone calls. A stickman animation of a high-rise office, phones ringing off the hook. This isn't what we paid for. This is ... aggressive. It's not family-friendly. But then, the other numbers came in. The social media metrics. The hashtag had been #1 worldwide, eclipsing the Super Bowl for mentions. The YouTube clip of the moment, uploaded by a fan, had 50 million views in 12 hours. The overnight ratings, when they finally came out, were the highest in a decade. The company was trapped. The very thing that was scaring away their blue-chip sponsors was, at the same time, the most popular thing they had ever done. The four, meanwhile, said nothing. No tweets, no celebratory Instagram posts. Their profiles went dark. Their silence was a vacuum, and the whole world was being sucked into it, forced to choose a side. The media war began, but the real battle was for the narrative of legacy. The old Four Horsewomen stable, the pioneers, were suddenly forced to comment. They were now the establishment. They were the ones who had to answer for the new guard. And what about the families? Imagine being Charlotte Flair. Imagine your entire life being defined by a name. Be a standard by the business. Your father is the business. We can imagine that phone call. The sound of a legend's voice. Not angry, but disappointed. That's not how you do it. You respect the champion. You respect the ring. This wasn't just a career choice for her. It was an abdication. She wasn't just the queen anymore. She was a revolutionary. She had, in one move, gambled her entire family's legacy on a single, silent statement. Then you have Rhea, the anti-hero. Her family back in Australia used to seeing the mommy character. Now they see her on the actual news. They see the threats online. They see the vitriol from fans who felt betrayed. The line between the performance and the person was gone. The pressure wasn't just to win a title. The pressure was to justify burning the entire kingdom down. They were no longer wrestlers. They were symbols. And symbols are heavy. They don't bend, they only break. The following week's show was announced, and the main event was a sit-down interview with the four. Not a match. Not a confrontation. An interview. The rest of the show just didn't matter. The greatest consequence, the one no one talks about, is what happened to the men. We focus on the women's division, but the entire hierarchy was appended. Let's picture the men's champion. The man who was dismissed. He goes to the office of the executive. He's furious. He's holding his title. "This is my show," he says. "This is my main event." And the executive, the architect, ... He just looks up from his desk, and he says, "It was." That's the real consequence. He didn't lose his title. He lost his relevance. His story, his championship, his year-long journey. It was now the B story. It was the men's division wasn't replaced. It was just ... demoted. And the other women. They were put in a #1 contenders battle royal. Think about that. The four had taken the castle, and the company's response was to make all the other women fight each other for the privilege of knocking on the door. The four hadn't even thrown a punch, and they had already won the psychological war. They had turned the entire roster against itself. The entire week was heavy. The online discourse was a war zone. Fans were divided. Some saw it as the ultimate feminist statement. Others saw it as the ultimate act of disrespect to the business. The four remained silent, and the company was silent. The suspension was never mentioned again. The champion who was kicked out of the ring. He wasn't even on the go-home advertisements. The entire billion-dollar machine was holding its breath, waiting to see what four women would say. Think about that power. The power to stop everything, just by existing. The power of a promise, or a threat. The day of the show arrives. The arena is sold out, but the energy is wrong. It's not the happy-go-lucky energy of a wrestling show. It's the tense, anxious energy of a public hearing. The early matches happen, but no one is watching. The crowd is just waiting. A stickman animation would show an entire arena, 20,000 people, all looking at the entrance ramp, not at the ring, at the ramp. The show was no longer the product. The waiting was the product. The anticipation was the story. The four had done the impossible. They had made the silence between words more important than the action. They weren't just in the main event. They were the entire show. And then, the time comes. The final hour of the show. The arena lights go blue and pink. No music. Just that low, resonant hum. They walk out this time in formation, looking like a cabinet, not a wrestling team. They enter the ring. A single, silver microphone stands in the center. The crowd is a mix of roars and boos. It's a divided, confused, passionate sound. Charlotte, the queen. She steps up first. She's booed. She represents the legacy they hate, even as she leads the new guard. She just smiles. She soaks in the hatred. She looks at the mic, and then she turns her back to it. She doesn't need to speak. She nods to Tiffany Stratton, the future. Tiffany steps up. Her hands are shaking. Who slightly. She's the new one. She's the one who skipped the line. She looks at the crowd. You all said I was just a star. You were right. She steps back. Then, Stephanie Vac, the outsider. The crowd is quiet. They don't know how to react. She takes the mic. You don't know me. You will. She steps back. And finally, Rhea, the nightmare, the mommy, the leader, the crowd, explodes. They want her. They need her to explain this. She takes the mic. She walks to the center of the ring. And she looks, not at the crowd. She looks directly into the camera. She looks at us. Rhea Ripley lets the noise wash over her. And then she speaks. Her voice is calm. Not shouting. Not a promo. A statement. You all wanted a revolution, she says. We, the viewers, we nod. We remember that word. We thought we'd had one. You thought the revolution, she continues, was about equality. She scoffs. You thought it was about getting a main event. You thought it was about sharing the spotlight. She paces, the camera following her. You got your main event. You got your first ever matches. And then, you all got comfortable. The office got comfortable. The men got comfortable. You got comfortable. She stops. She looks at the other three. Charlotte steps forward, standing beside her. Equality isn't the goal, the queen says, her voice like ice. Equality is the minimum. We're not here to be equal to the men. Tiffany steps up. We're not here to join the main event. Stephanie steps up. We are the main event. Rhea takes the mic back for the final word. This company, this industry, built itself on one thing. A man's world, a man's story. And this is the moment we all missed. This is the twist. The revolution, Rhea says, is not about sharing the show. She looks at her partners. We're not here to ask for a seat at their table. She looks back at the camera. At us, we're here to break it. And that was the revolution. It wasn't about being as good as the men. It was the realization that they were better. It wasn't about sharing power. It was about taking it. The question was never why did they do it. The question was what happens to everyone else now that they have to rebuild the entire industry in their shadow.